Protests are expected to continue in Minnesota as tensions reach a boiling point following the latest fatal shooting by federal agents. They come after days of major protests throughout the state. On Friday, we saw these powerful images as several thousand Minnesotans braved the Arctic temperatures to take to the streets, while at Minnesota's largest airport, more than 100 clergy members were arrested protesting the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Joining us now is one of the clergy members arrested in that protest, Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair of St. Paul's Unity Church Unitarian. Reverend, thank you very much for coming to the weekend. Given that it's Sunday, how are you going to talk to your congregation about this, especially when I'm sure you have members in your congregation who have a mix, a swirl of emotions, fear, resolve, or both? What are you going to say to them today?
We've been talking about this really for the last 6 months, because this is not about just what's happened this week or this month, but what's been going on for a long time, both around the country and here in the Twin Cities. So the message today, this morning, will largely be the same message that it was last week and the same message that was last night when we gathered here for a vigil. In this place, we preach that each person is beloved and that we are all interconnected. And if we take those two things as true, then they require us to act in the world, especially in a moment of profound moral crisis, which is what we're in right now.
Reverend Doctor, when these things happen, none of us are experiencing them alone. It's very collective, and I can't imagine how the community that you serve, the kind of collective fear, concern, grief, the collective fight that it seems like the folks in Minneapolis and the surrounding areas have. But what does it do to a community when they watch with their own eyes someone who has been on the streets with them, simply doing their exercising their constitutional right, get shot, and then immediately have the leaders of their country tell them what they saw with their own eyes is not actually true? What does that do to the community?
Yeah, it's a profoundly scarring thing for a community to go through. And the Twin Cities have gone through this a couple times now. And so in some ways, we're well practiced in being able to distinguish what we see with our eyes from the lies that get told in a narrative. What's really incredible to see is the number of people who take that real moment of pain and trauma and turn out in the ways that are on the screen right now, right? Lighting candles, being out with each other, covering schools and pickups and drop-offs so that children can go to school safely at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's been incredibly heartening to serve in a church these days, to watch folks turning that fear and anxiety into action and not just sitting in the anxiety of the moment, but saying, how can we help? Yeah.
And Reverend Doctor, I want to read a quote to you from an Associated Press article from another reverend who was involved in the protest. Reverend Mariah Furness Tolgard of Hamlin Church in St. Paul said police ordered them to leave, but she and others decided to stay and be arrested to show support for migrants, including members of her congregation who are afraid to leave their homes. I imagine you are also currently dealing with a similar situation with clergy members and members of the church who are afraid to leave their homes. How are you supporting those migrants right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are folks all across the city afraid to leave their homes. So everybody in Minneapolis, whether it's a congregation or just neighbors, will have a story like that right now. So that looks like mutual aid. That looks like my wife has been out front of a school every single morning for the last 2 weeks in very, very cold weather, making sure that kids get to school safely. Watching the community mobilize to say that this is a place where we support each other is a really profound response to what we're seeing. The best of who we are, both as a community and a church, is a place that says, even in the midst of terror, we also we can show a different way of being. And that really is what we're seeing out of our folks here, even in the midst of a lot of fear and anxiety.
Reverend, we have heard a lot from the administration, from the president to the DHS secretary to the deputy White House chief of staff and other members of the administration, paint what happened yesterday and what's happening in Minneapolis in ways that defy what people can see with their own eyes. What are you telling your congregants about what it means to be the subject of a campaign that casts them in such a negative light?
Mm-hmm. That's such an important question. When I was installed at this church, when I started here a year and a half ago, the people installing me used some old language from our tradition. It's about 200 years old, but it goes, my brother, may your life speak more loudly than your lips. And so what I'm telling my congregants is that's now true for all of us in this moment. Let our lives speak. Like we will show by how we show up with the enormous number of cameras and the enormous number of eyes that are trained on Minneapolis and St. Paul, where I am, the lie that is this narrative, that there is an underlying truth that this is a peaceful and beautiful city that is being profoundly disrupted by ICE and Border Patrol agents. That's the truth that we are living every day.
May your life speak more loudly than your lips. Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair with Pearls of Wisdom this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.